Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com.
Draft Mechanic, episode 120.
On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we discuss recent plays of Captive, the Crusoe Crew, Choose Your Own Adventure House of Danger, and we've got a 6-pack review and an on-tap for Mystery House Adventures in a Box. We have a hop primer on Summit Hops, and in our final round, we ask about gaming with your partner at cons and events. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future and it works to take a mile. No bit. All is for the best in the best of our world.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And Draft Mechanic is the podcast about board games and craft beer and anything we can do to tie the two together.
Here at Draft Mechanic, we like our beer like we like our board games.
In a house.
Yes.
Hashtag stay home.
I mean, it is actually quite relevant to many of the games that we are talking about. It was originally all of the games and books and things that we were talking about.
Then
but
you
I
snuck
threw
that
in
Crusoe Crew in the last second.
That's not so much in a house. It's sort of the opposite.
I do find it kind of interesting that as we were, putting together stuff to work on this episode, we didn't even realize until 2 days ago that we're just hang on, all of these games are about being trapped in houses in some way.
I mean, I guess that's a pretty good thing for solo and 2-player games.
Yes, very true. So, hey, out there in podcast listening land, thank you so much for tuning into this here episode of Draft Mechanic. You can find us on the internet, as always, at draftmechanic.net or on Facebook, Twitter, social, Instagram, places, at Draft Mechanic. That's the place.
We also have a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. There will be a thread up for this episode, as there is for every episode. If we are talking about something and you have an opinion or you just want to tell us that we're wrong or that we're right, you can go there and do it.
Yes. Also, No, this is your turn again.
I mean, usually I would say if you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we do twice monthly meetups, but we obviously do not right now because stay home.
Yes, the next board game meetup is in your house, and you can go to it. Nobody else can go unless they live in your house.
What I do want to say is something that we mentioned last episode. It's that the places that we do our meetups, and probably places in your area that do board gaming meetups that happen to be breweries or cideries or meaderies, are doing takeout for their products, their alcoholic beverages, probably their non-alcoholic beverages, if they sell those, if they sell food. Please do support your local establishments, because that is what's going to get them through and have them able to host board gaming meetups for you when hopefully we can all leave our houses again sometime.
Yes, absolutely. Salute has started to can a lot of its beverages, in addition to doing their draft and crowlers. They have some, was it Kavik IPA? I don't know how to really pronounce that. You enjoyed that one?
I did.
Then they had a Keller Pills as well, I think it was on this set. Or maybe that's coming up next. I don't know. They're canning a whole bunch of stuff in the near future.
They're canning their Daryliner Weiss.
Yes.
In 2 different versions, the mixed berry, and Jason couldn't remember what the second one was.
And to the other one.
But if you happen to enjoy that sort of milder sour, the Daryliner Weiss is a great option if you're in the Charlotte area. So go buy that from Salute.
Yes, and once again, please support your local craft breweries, bars, restaurants, and service industry. They need your help so much right now.
We also should mention, because it's a small business and because we were technically contractually obligated to say this at the beginning of the podcast, Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Gray Fox Games. I forgot that the last 2 episodes, but we say it many other times.
Yeah. And they currently have a Kickstarter up for Science, which is a game that you can look at on the Kickstarter.
I love science.
Yeah.
We should all listen to science.
It would be really great if people started listening to science more.
News.
Board game news. How about we go board game news? Because y'all don't need the rest of the world news. The Golden Geeks Awards are up, the nominations are up. So cool. Go do that if you want.
I do have to say, I was going through it and I was just looking at the voting, and in the awards nominations for last year, the ones that are open right now, the 2-player game category and solo game category they were strong, but a lot of them were also multiplayer games that have single player.
Yeah, have solo modes. Wingspan, not a solo game.
Cartographers was the one that immediately jumped to my mind.
Yeah,
It can play very well as a solo game, but I wouldn't think of it as a solo game. I'm wondering if when we are all nominating things this time next year, if we all remember how many 2-player and solo games that we're all trying to play right now. And I have a feeling those categories are going to be a little bit more robust.
Wouldn't surprise me. And if you are looking for anything that I would encourage you to do, take a look at Atlantis Rising for best artwork, because we did not talk about it in our year-end wrap-up, but holy cow, that artwork is amazing.
It is quite
That's
good.
my personal pick for art. I think it's unbelievably gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember how I ranked it, but I know it was in the top three
Yeah.
for mine.
Good,
It's good.
good.
It's Vincent Dutrait artwork. Of course it's good.
Very good. So yeah, oh boy. I mean, I went and I looked back at our 2019 year in review list, and then I looked at the Golden Geeks, and I saw literally one game that is a crossover between any of the categories. Taverns of Tiefenthal. It was our number 2, and I don't think
Did we not mention Wingspan for art?
Oh, we mentioned it for art. I'm just talking for a board game of the year category. Because like Escape Tales doesn't get nominated for this. And
No.
what else?
There was a game on there that was I think it was on the best of the year list that I immediately ranked 15 because I hated it.
Oh, I wonder which game that is. Is
It's
it the
A
one
Wonderful World.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about it on this podcast because we played it once when we were traveling. We got to play it with Sean from Dukes of Dice when we were out in Albuquerque visiting your dad and your stepmom.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to invest in playing that ever again.
It was a wholly irrelevant experience in my gaming life. And that's about how I feel about that. We're never this critical of the podcast.
I was just very surprised to see it on
Holy
a
moly,
Game of the
are
Year
you-
list.
Really? All right. Well,
Maybe
hey,
they had
some
really
people like
good
their-
marketing.
I am sure that somebody is going to take to the internet and tell me that they enjoyed It's a Wonderful World. And if you enjoyed that game, good for you.
I mean, if I remember correctly, Sean and Alex might do that.
Yeah,
But
maybe.
whatever.
It was fine. It was fine. The news that is actually important and I think is very, very relevant right now, there's a website called tabletop.events, and this is an online convention management service that has been used for a whole ton of conventions. Geekway to the West uses it, Make a MooseCon uses it, the Gaming Hoopla uses it. These are all conventions that I've attended in the last few years. You haven't been to the Hooplas, which is why I say but you obviously use it for everything else as well. But tabletop.events is desperately in need of your support right now because, unsurprisingly, if there are no conventions, there is no revenue for the service that runs those conventions.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But it's such a useful website that, I mean, hundreds of conventions a year use this thing. It is a lot of board game conventions, and they were pretty much facing a straight-up shutdown at the beginning of May. But the community is banding together and working with tabletop.events to put on a virtual convention called the Con of Champions. This will be taking place over Memorial Day weekend, May 23rd through 25th. And if you go to tabletop.events now, you can go onto that convention website and you can buy a virtual badge, which are different donation levels from $5 for a con badge to up to $7,000 if you want to cover 1 month of their hosting and back-end service, basically.
That's quite a spectrum.
Yes, but there's all sorts of different levels like that, and the really, obviously, other than giving some support to this website that's been kind of the backbone of conventions for the last few years, the other thing is that you have access to a whole bunch of really good perks, and depending on your donation level, if you donate to one of those higher badges, you're going to get in there sooner. There's a bunch of different things that range all the way from discounted convention tickets or gift certificates or digital game codes. There's straight up like, you can get a proto spiel one-on-one session with a game developer, stuff like that. One thing that I did see on there, one of the perks is two VIP badges for the Gaming Hoopla, which just got rescheduled. It was supposed to be actually, I think, this coming weekend, and they're rescheduling it for the middle of August 14th through 16th.
Okay.
In Chicago, not Gen Con weekend.
I was going to say that would be a bad
Assuming
idea.
Gen Con exists this year, which who knows at this point.
But if Gen Con wouldn't exist, then they couldn't have the Gaming Hoopla then either.
Different state.
One would think that they would have similar...
You would think. We'll see. But anyway, I really encourage everybody to go take a look at this. They currently have raised about $33,000. Their goal is about $56,000 to keep tabletop.events running for the remainder of this year. And hopefully, into the fall and into next year, they can start generating revenue again by being the backbone of conventions once again. So there's already well over 200 events on the schedule. Basically, you are going to, sign up for and either run or participate in online gaming on Roll20 or Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator, all sorts of those things. You can do it straight up on Discord and Skype if you want to. It doesn't matter how you're playing the games, just as long as you're doing it as part of this virtual convention. So that is the thing that I would love if everybody went to go take a look at right now. It is tabletop.events. Go support the Con of Champions if you are able to do so. And maybe play some games online. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, Danielle, it's time to move on to the Kickstarterings.
Kind of feels like we were already there a little bit, but let's
I guess, yeah, that's a nice
do
little
some
bridge.
project updates for the stuff we talked about last episode. First off, I want to mention, just because it is episode thematically relevant, that one of the things that I did an update on last episode, I think we talked about 2 episodes ago, Graphic Novel Adventures Series 3 from Van Ryder Games and the Graphic Novel Adventure brand is funded, but they are still taking late pledges for this Series 3 of books. So if what we're talking about when we're talking about Captive and Crusoe Crew sounds really interesting to you, you can still go to their Kickstarter page and pledge for the 3rd series. And I think you can add on pretty much everything else that you could possibly want
Every book ever.
from that series. If you are interested in getting that, that is still available. But in Kickstarters I haven't done an update on, Lions of Lydia, which just had a few days to fund when we were talking about it last episode, from Bellwether Games, has funded with $56,169 of their $20,000 goal, 969 backers.
Hooray.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
enjoy
really
that.
excited. It was a good game. I hope a lot of people have fun with it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing the final copy of that one someday. So we'll get there in the future. As for new projects, I have one new exciting project for you. It is one that I talked about in the Gen Con episode last year. It has been a long time.
You did?
Yeah, it was Gen Con. I briefly mentioned that I had taken a look at this. It is a game called Planet Unknown, coming from Adam's Apple Games. It's currently funding at $121,000 of its $20,000 goal, with just a little bit more than 2,000 backers. This one ends on Friday, May 1st, so you still have some time to get in on that. And this one has an estimated delivery of October 2020, which I will put a big ol' asterisk on. I don't think we're going to make that, but boy, would that be great. You can back it for $49 to get the retail edition, but you're probably going to back it for $69 for the deluxe edition if you back this game on Kickstarter, because you want the fancy fun stuff from Kickstarter. That's what Kickstarter's for. Otherwise, you'll just buy it at retail.
Nice.
Right? Okay. So in the deluxe edition, you're going to get a bunch of cool components like a Lazy Susan, triple layer player boards, plastic bits replacing the wooden components, and a wooden first player marker replacing the punch board first player component.
Cool.
Which of those components caught your eye?
I'm trying to figure out what the 3rd layer is.
Well, I mean, they're double-sided. So it's one center. Yeah. What is the component that really caught your eye?
I mean,
It has a Lazy Susan in it. Jake,
Yeah.
why does it have a Lazy Susan in it? Which
to
is
spin it.
where I was hoping we were going with this. Anyway, so Planet Unknown is a simultaneous selection polyomino tile laying game in space. Boom, I'm there. You just, like, if you threw in, like, card drafting or something, ooh, oh boy. I guess it is kind of a little bit of a drafting because you're taking a tile.
Jake, why does it need a Lazy Susan?
Well, it needs a Lazy Susan to kind of make the simultaneous selection thing happen. So basically in the game, you're going to be taking these polyomino tiles off this central Lazy Susan board. It's split up into 6 different pie-shaped sections. Each of the pie shapes has 2 different stacks of polyomino tiles on it of, maybe like this one has the long piece and the S piece. Maybe that wedge has the T and the L or something like that. You know what polyominoes look like. I'm not going to spell out all of them for you. But on your turn, as the first player, you're going to rotate the Lazy Susan so one of the bays is facing you, and you're going to take one of the 2 tiles off the top, forcing everybody else at the table to take things from their particular section that is facing them. This is not unlike a game like Lanterns or Lanterns Dice, where you're kind of like determining based on the position of what you place, everybody else is going to get a different outcome as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Ariel did that as well when you rotated the Tetramino pieces.
Kind of a similar thing there, except in that, you're only going to be doing it on yours, and you can spend actions to turn it. This one, you must take from that bay. You do not have the option to not take it. So you are simultaneously getting what you want and also forcing everybody else to deal with whatever polyomino comes with them.
Ooh.
When you take the polyomino, it has 2 different resources on it. Maybe it's like water and, I don't know, mountain or something like that, and whatever they are, you're going to advance on the tracks on your particular player board. Your player board has 5 tracks, 1 for each of the different resources, and in the dual layeringness of them all, you slide cubes up. The cool thing is about this is that every single one of the player boards is unique as well, so they all have their own different versions of the tracks that are all balanced in different ways with different advantages and disadvantages to either give you different scoring options, different bonuses, different synergies that impact other tracks, so on and so forth. In addition to all that, you're going to be trying to fill out your planet board, which is where you're placing your tiles, and you're going to hopefully get, complete columns, complete rows. Some of the tiles you put meteors down on your planet, and you're like, oh no, I got to get my rover over there to pick up the meteor, otherwise I don't score points for that row. Additionally, you have some, scoring objectives, And you also have a scoring objective card between you and the player to either side of you.
Oh, like between two cities.
Yeah, but with a scoring card there. So you've got all these different pieces that are kind of coming together, combined with that tile selection thing where everybody's playing every turn, so there's no downtime, up to 6 players. That sounds like a cool idea to me.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you play it?
No, I did not get to play it.
Oh, I was going to say, was it fun?
No, I didn't get to play it at Gen Con, but I just got to take a look at it, and Adam from Adam's Apple Games walked me through like how it plays and how we do this stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, there we go. That's a cool way to make this kind of polyomino tile selection thing go smoothly for all players with no downtime whatsoever. Game plays in 60 to 70 minutes. I think it's a really, really smart idea. This is one that I've been waiting for a while, but it really just comes back to the sentence that I said at the beginning: simultaneous selection polyomino tile laying game in space.
Does seem like a bit of a space hog, though.
Space. In terms of
storage?
No, it's your standard 12 by 12 box. So the Lazy Susan fits in that 12 by 12 box.
Okay.
And it has like a, collapsible, I think like a removable base or something. So,
cool.
Like that.
It's always nice to not have to have a whole cube of something dedicated to just storing one game.
Yeah, it's not like that, what was it, that giant game, the big one, the one that had that giant ring. I don't remember what it was called because we don't talk about it anymore.
I was mostly thinking of like a rotating Scrabble board, which is a pain in the butt to store because it's large.
No, it's not that big. It's going to, from what I saw, it's going to be your standard, Ticket to Ride style size box.
Cool.
But like realistically, if this is a game that's interesting to you, I feel like it is kind of guaranteed you want to get the deluxe version. The retail version does not come with the Lazy Susan. It's just a cardboard tray that you're going to spin around. And also... Yeah,
that's the laziest Susan.
The other advantages is that the deluxe edition has the triple layered player boards instead of just a double-sided double-sided cardboard piece. You're going to obviously bump some cubes because that is what we are concerned about as gamers, bumping cubes. It's a space game about terraforming. We're going to talk about bumping cubes on tracks.
Cool.
Yeah, so Planet Unknown, it is going on till Friday, May 1st. I encourage you to go take a look at it. I might back this one. I haven't backed a game in quite some time, so I don't know. We'll take a look.
That feels like an overstatement.
No, I really haven't backed a game in at least 3 months. 2 months? 1.5 months.
We have different definitions of the phrase quite some time.
I haven't backed a game that I can remember that's been on the updates.
Want to wear your Draft Mechanic pride to your local brewery, board game meetup, or board game meetup at a brewery? Check out redbubble.com/people/draft mechanic for t-shirts.
It's time to talk about recent plays. And first up, I would like Danielle to educate us about Captive, the 2018 release and first in the series of the graphic novel adventures from Van Ryder Games. This game plays 1-to-1 players in 30 to 130 minutes. It is designed by Emmanuel Manero with art by MC. This is a game of inventory management, route memory, and flippin'. Danielle, tell us about the flippin'.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is not a game. This is a book.
It's still a game. It's an activity?
I think this is actually the epitome of it is an activity.
Okay.
You can win and lose it, though.
Okay. A lost state is a game.
Yes, it is.
Says Jeff Finkelstein.
Okay. But I did want to talk about this. This one actually was listed as Van Ryder Games as well, because I think this was before Graphic Novel Adventures was their own...
Its own sub-brand?
Yeah, sub-brand. Yeah. When we talk about Crusoe Crew, it's only Graphic Novel Adventures.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
But in Captive, you are trying to rescue your daughter. It is a choose-your-own-adventure book, which is done in graphic novel style. If you have ever seen a choose-your-own-adventure book and a graphic novel, that should make sense to you. There are many numbered illustrated panels that are spread throughout the book. They are not in consecutive order, so if you look at panel 1 and then look at panel 2, they will not continue the story throughout the book in that way. But at the beginning, you have a small character sheet, like really, really basic character sheet. You have 3 stats. You have your beating up, you have your thinking about stuff, and you have your dexterity. So you have dexterity, will, and strength. You are going to assign points so that you have at least, I think it's 5 points in each, and then you have 5 additional points to spread throughout your 3 stats. So you may have like 6 and 7 and 7 on strength, will, dexterity in that. You also are going to have a space where you can mark time throughout your adventure. You are going to have some inventory space and a space where you can take notes. There's also a health patch that you can, as you take damage, you can mark off things on your health section. I would recommend, if you get this game, that you cover that with a piece of paper, or you get the downloadable bookmark that they have on their website that allows you to do that. I use little flower Post-it notes that I put over the front page because you're probably going to do this game more than once.
Flowery, thematically appropriate.
They were the only Post-it notes we have. Anyway, you are going to read the first 4 or 5 pages, which are not part of the Choose Your Own section. They are a consecutive story, and it will set it up. Why you're trying to rescue your daughter, what has happened to her, who you are a little bit, very vaguely, and where you are headed. And then you are going to start choosing. The pictures have numbers written in them, and if you want to go to a section of the picture that has a number on it, you just flip to that numbered panel, and it'll give you a new piece of graphic novel. There will be dialogue, maybe. There will be like narrator text box, maybe. And you are going to just flip through. Anytime you see a number, it's a place you can go. Anytime you see a little hourglass symbol on the illustration, you are going to mark down a time. And depending on how many time units you have marked throughout your adventure, different things may happen in specific locations. It may say, like, if you have 3 or more time, read this panel. If you have 2 or fewer time, read this panel, sort of symbolizing as you go through, the states of things change because people move and situations change. Something may be gone or somebody may have shown up, depending on how long you take. You may encounter dangers. You will encounter dangers.
Wouldn't be much of an adventure if you didn't encounter some dangers in this game about your kidnapped daughter.
May and will take damage. As you take damage, you're going to mark that down on your front sheet. You can carry up to 3 things, so you may encounter stuff that it will say you can add this to your inventory if you'd like. As you keep going, you're going to go until the book says you don't go anymore.
And
I assume there's a win condition. I played it twice. You played it once.
Yeah.
We did not find the win condition.
We found near win conditions.
We found end
and very
conditions.
lose conditions.
Well, I guess there are several endings is what I'm trying to get across. You can redo this again if you used your Post-it notes or you used a different sheet to write down your stats. You don't even need to erase everything. You can just start at the beginning and flip through. Choose a different path, take different items into your inventory, go different ways. As long as you can find the numbers, you can go there.
Yeah. That's the thing.
I mean, that's it. I don't think I need to explain Choose Your Own Adventure books to people that much.
No, but we're going to do it a bunch of times in this episode.
True.
I will say right up front, this one is a pretty thematically heavy story, in my particular opinion.
Van Ryder Games rates these things. If
Yeah.
you go to that Series 3 Kickstarter, there is a portion of that where it shows the ratings because you can order previous books. There are only 2 in the series so far that I saw when I was looking through that are rated M for mature. They have A for all, T for teen, M for mature. There are only 2 that are M for mature. One is Captive.
Yeah.
One is Hold Up, or Hold Up as it is actually called.
Hold up.
That is about a robbery. So yeah, obviously going to be some heavy themes there. But Captive is not a game for kids.
No, it is not lighthearted.
I feel very badly. We got this as a promo copy from Eric Buscemi from Cardboard Horde. He had an 11-year-old daughter he has what at the time was an 11-year-old daughter with the same name as the main character's daughter.
Oh.
So in the first 3 pages of the book, he was a shook gentleman, and I don't blame him because this novel doesn't pull punches. There is definitely some intense artwork, I will say, and some kind of spooky themes. So if that is a thing that you are worried about, if you don't like grotesque or gore or like horror movie tropes like that, this ain't gonna be for you.
It's kind of the similar warning we give with Escape Tales: The Awakening. With the child in peril and other things that we don't want to spoil, because there is a good bit of narrative development in Captive as well. I will say this did not proceed how I expected it to. I expected it to be your typical daughter was taken, I have a set of skills kind of story just from a look at it. I won't say anything about it, but it definitely goes in a way different direction than I expected.
Yes, it is not simply you punch a man in the face and take something, and then you punch another man in the face and take something. There is definitely a deeper story involved.
You will punch things other than man in the face, but you will also take things.
Yes.
Yeah. And I really... enjoyed that. I enjoyed the development of the story and it going in interesting directions. I felt like I was surprised how much ground that book was able to cover as a relatively quick play. I mean, it's an hour-ish or so to play through, maybe 2 hours if you really get all the way through.
I think it depends on how much you screw up.
Yeah.
I played it twice, and the first time through, it definitely took me longer, but I also saw more of the house and the grounds of the house, because this is one of those things that takes place in a house that we talked about earlier. But I saw more of it the first time through. The second time, I was moving quicker because I knew where some things were, but also I made some poor decisions at new information that I had not previously known, and just ended up wasting a bunch of my time and a bunch of my health.
Yeah.
And I died sooner.
Yeah.
Did a stupid thing. But I think it is an interesting, captivating thing. Captivating, but no, it is enthralling the whole way through, certainly.
Yeah. And the other thing that I really, really appreciated about this, you talked about the way that it manages time. I was surprised how effectively that felt like I was actually in like a real scenario, not in a real scenario, but like I was inhabiting a world that was evolving as going through the book went on, which is something that I don't really expect. And like, we talk about, obviously we come back to time stories all the time. There are very few scenarios in time stories where, depending on the time you are at, different things will happen when you go to a particular situation. They're in there, but not at the level really in Captive here, which is really straight up. As you're moving through the house, other people are also moving through the house, and depending on your time, you're going to come across different things.
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really well managed.
I also did. And it gave it sort of a different feel to just walking around. Like, if I'm walking from here to the bathroom to the kitchen, that doesn't take a long time. Whereas if I have an encounter with another person and we have a fight and then I have to tend to somebody, like, that's going to take longer than it's going to take me to walk 20 feet. And you're probably going to encounter a time thing there. Or it might be, I think one of the things I noticed was as you entered an area, there was a time marker. And when you were in that area, you could walk around that whole area pretty quickly. And until you either entered a different area or interacted with something on a much deeper level, there are items that you can read at the end of the book that give you more information that can be conveyed in 1 or 2 graphic novel panels, even on a full page panel. So if you go to read something like that, obviously that's going to take a little bit more time. So you may encounter a time marker there. It made it feel more like I was moving about an actual space, other than just like, oh, now I flip here, and it's all the same, and it's this and it's that.
The other thing I will say about this, and this is going to kind of come up as we talk more about the other stuff in this episode, this one being a graphic novel, you had less to kind of examine per section before you had to make a decision. Meaning, we said in the stats there, flipping is a major part of this. I feel like I spent a lot of time turning pages.
Yes.
More than I would in a typical Choose Your Own Adventure book, because in a book, you're going to have to read through the whole 1 or 2 page section and kind of process that in a different way. Obviously, there's parts in Captive where I've got to really examine a scene, or I've got to look for, special things, or see different things that I might want to take a look at in the corner of a page. But I really there's a point where you're just flipping back and forth and examining rooms, and rooms are just leading to other rooms, and you're just kind of moving at a speed where you're spending more time on the edges of the page than you are on the actual page.
I do feel like the hidden numbers help that a little bit.
Yeah.
There are numbers that are hidden in the picture. So if there's a piece of paper that's tucked underneath like a shirt that's on the floor, you have to find that number. Whereas stuff like doors is always very clearly marked. Like if it's an obvious thing that you would know that you can go through, the number will be very boldly written.
Yeah.
Whereas, something hidden may be just a smaller number or in a different font. So that slowed me down a little. I also found that the second time through, I had a better feeling of where to keep my finger.
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of a joke about, well, in this you need to, because you're going to go through the same connecting rooms again and again. Like most of the areas have a central hallway, and there are 4 or 5 rooms off that central hallway that may connect to each other. They may connect to other rooms, but you're going to have the option of going through that central hallway a couple of times before you leave the area. So I'd usually just stick my finger in that page, and as I go to this room, okay, oh, there's a way to go. I can go that way, but as I come back to that hallway, oh, my finger's still in it. It's fine. And then when I go to the new area, I'll put my finger in the new central hallway thing. That made it a lot easier to flip through.
Gotcha.
I'm going to reserve my flipping comments for another thing we're going to be talking about.
I don't doubt it. There's going to be a lot of flipping throughout this episode.
I will say, though, you are flipping around well. I think the art kept me a little bit more entertained in this and the story.
The art is really good.
It is well done.
It has that noir feel done well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have one component thing that I do want to say, and it's not really a complaint because we didn't have this problem, but I feel like it would be for anyone else. We have a promo copy of this book. Ours is a paperback cover, which I found really good. I was like, oh, I can bend it and flip through it really easily. Until I went to the Kickstarter page for the 3rd series and realized that all of the actual books, if you were to actually buy this, are hardbound.
Yes.
I feel like that would make flipping through and flipping back a lot more of a pain in the butt. Like, flipping through hardcover books is just a pain. It's why I don't like them in general. Like, you can't bend the book to flip through it really quickly. Whereas, like, if you're just thumbing through a softcover book, you can be like, oh, I'm going to thumb through. I need 200 something. I can thumb through this pretty quickly and get to the back of it. Whereas a hardcover book, you're like, oh, okay, I'll divide this. It's not a big gripe. Obviously, it's a more durable book, and I'm saying you're probably going to play this more than once if you buy it. So it's good to have a durable thing. But also, I'd be really bummed if I got this in hardcover now that I've played it in softcover. And the softcover was just the promo copy.
Yeah. You can never go back again to softcover, I guess.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think it's interesting that you can't get these in softcover.
So, like you said, this is one that was a promo copy that we've actually kind of had for a little bit, and we were kind of reluctant to get to it just because, obviously, we want to play games with a bunch of people, and this is a very solitary activity. And I want to know, now that you have played this, are you more interested to go play more of the other ones available in the graphic novel adventure series?
I don't actually know.
Okay.
I should have been prepared for that question, but I think it largely depends on how I'm feeling at the time because the themes are so widely varied.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
A lot of what I liked about this is it did its theme very well. The sort of twist in the theme from being a taken story to being what it is, I think they handled very well. I think it was gruesome in the way that gruesome things work.
Yeah, okay.
Like, it wasn't
gory, per se.
Oh, it was occasionally gory.
Yeah.
I will not say that, but it handled it in a way that, I don't know, just sat really nicely in my theme liking
Zone.
or disliking zone. But I was looking through some of the ones that were available, and there's one that's like a Japanese goddess one that I wasn't particularly interested in. There's a couple of pirate ones that look like they're practically treading on the Crusoe Crew territory. I think that they're probably related in some way.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of Sherlock Holmes stuff, which I guess is fine. There's a weird one that has very comic art, but is a Sherlock Holmes Jack the Ripper thing, which I don't understand how those two things marry at all.
Strange.
But
there is a Series 3. Hold up.
Yeah, there is that one. Maybe that's the one for me to play, but
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I'd have to be in the mood for whichever one it was.
Yeah.
I'd probably just play this one again and try to do better.
Well, I mean, that's also good that, there's replayability in this because it's the kind of thing you don't expect from a lot of, adventure story games is the replayability. So seeing that in there is a really big plus. And I wouldn't be surprised if we, went at a few other themes. We might find a few others that I really like. I'll be honest, I didn't super love this book.
That's a lot.
I really respected it, and I thought it had a lot of awesome ideas. Like I said, the time management is really cool. I like the story twist existing, and it's done well. I like the way that you're mechanically managing your inventory, stuff like that. I wasn't super hooked on the story and the theme and stuff like that, despite appreciating for what it is. Like, I'm really interested in the one that's like, you're developing a Wild West town, because I want to know how that's done as a book, especially now that I trust them to do interesting time management mechanics in these books. So I am interested to see other ones in the series. And I think even though I don't want to play Captive again, unlike you, I'm more interested to see what the rest of the graphic novel adventures have.
I think this is definitely something that you would agree with me if I were to say, look through the options and pick the ones that speak to you. This is not the kind of thing where you need to buy all of them just because they're all in the same series.
Yeah.
I think that is going to do yourself and these graphic novel adventures a disservice because not every theme is made for every person.
Yeah.
Like, find the ones that appeal to you if this is the kind of thing that you want to give a try.
Cool. All right. Well, that is Captive, the very first of the graphic novel adventures. Maybe now we move on to the other side of the coin, perhaps?
The side that has 3 more people, certainly.
What? A book with 3 more people?
What? 3 more people being allowed to be in a room with you?
What? Oh, fair.
The Crusoe Crew is a 2019 release from Graphic Novel Adventures, which plays 1 to 4 players in 45 minutes. It is designed by Shuki with art by Gorobai. This is a game of player abilities, treasure collection, and very, very, very small numbers.
Yes, and I will say in advance that this was played in the before times when we were able to have 4 people gathered around tables, each with their own book of the Crusoe Crew. Because, what? This is 4 books?
You are all different children
Yeah.
with fun abilities.
Yeah, so in the Crusoe Crew, it's going to proceed very similarly to the graphic novel adventure Captive we just described, except this time, everybody has their own book. Everybody is playing their own character, and nobody has been taken
I was
captive.
going to say the children have a far better outcome.
The children are you, and you are not captive, which is a big plus for you being children. But anyway, everybody's got their own book, and they're playing their own character. And the kind of interesting hook on this one is that as you are progressing through scenarios and different, rooms and spaces, each of your characters' books are going to have different things highlighted or visible on the panels to signify that character's particular abilities. One can talk to animals, one's super strong, one does something else that I don't remember, but you know what I mean, stuff like that. Comedy rule of 3s, I can't remember the third one. And you're going to kind of have to work and talk with everybody and describe what you're seeing and what you think you can do. Like, hey, I'm going to go ask that bird what's up. What's up, bird? Because you can talk to animals.
So your book would have like a number on that bird.
Yeah.
And everybody else's would just have a picture of a bird, and we're all like, what are you doing?
So mechanically, the interesting thing there is that everybody can then play something that is, suitable or gives them a power in the story and kind of prevents the quarterbacking you would get in a cooperative kind of adventure game like this. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that if my bird goes to panel 143, that means panel 143 in somebody else's book could be something completely different that's specific to their character, accessed from a different place in the book. And I like that kind of efficiency of book. I think that's smart. The way that this one is, basically you are a crew of kids that are going onto an island to recover a bunch of treasure because your dad's in trouble and has to pay off the pirate loan man.
Your dad is Robinson Crusoe.
Yeah, but he's in trouble. He has to pay off the pirate loan man. I think we can just leave it at that. That's funny. But anyway, as you're going through the game, you're also going to be looking in the panels for gems and pearls and some trinkets like that. And if you have the deluxe edition, which I do because that's how I roll sometimes, I buy the shiny bit of stuff. You actually have little plastic tokens and pieces that are in this little magnetic treasure chest kind of piece, and you're going to be collecting those. If you just buy without that, then you have a sheet at the very front of the box that you mark off stuff as you go. And this one is also replayable in that depending on where you go, you can choose different islands to go to that will have their own special adventures, and you'll learn different stuff in different places. Kind of given the timing of the world, we only got a chance to play through the first scenario of this.
Well, that was also a component issue that I'm sure we'll get to.
Yes, we will get to the component issue in a bit. But, we only got to go through the first island, which, kind of gave you an understanding of how things work, and you're also doing your collection and stuff like that. But there is a good bit more content to this than we have had a chance to get to yet. So that's pretty much what it is. You're trying to collect some stuff, and then at the end, you get a score on how much treasure you've collected and whether or not they're mad at your dad. Mad at your dad, treasure-wise. Yeah. So I guess we should start off with the component issue. The first printing of Crusoe Crew had a big issue with the glue-bound spines of the books not being as glue-bound as you would want glue-bound books to be. So about a third of the way through it, Nathan's book had fallen mostly out of the book.
I was going to say it was no longer really what you would call a book.
It was a collection of pages. One thing I will say is that Van Ryder Games was on top of it, contacted them, told them about the problem, and they shipped them, 4 new books that are all in great condition pretty much immediately. So if you do get this, be aware that is an issue with the first printing that has been corrected, and you can get replacements if you need them.
But mostly what you're buying now, I would assume, would be a different printing.
Yeah, I would hope so. In addition to that, obviously, component-wise, you have a nice kind of magnetic slipcase box that you're storing all the books in, and that's a really, really nice piece. I like the component presentation of that a lot.
Yeah, and the art is also super cute.
Oh, it's super cute, super colorful, and I think that color is going to be necessary for the quote-unquote detail of some of the pictures, which I'm pretty sure is going to be one of the biggest things we're going to talk about because of tiny numbers.
Yeah, but before we get to that, we had mentioned flipping in Captive.
Yeah.
And there is a good bit of flipping in Captive. For whatever flipping there is in Captive, there is that flipping squared in Crusoe Crew, I felt like.
It's flipping crazy.
There were a lot more panels in Crusoe Crew where you were just walking through them doing nothing. And that
Just
in a game where you
beaches,
have
stuff
to
like that.
flip, or like you just walk through this corridor to get to another thing. And maybe there's one number for one of the players there. But after they explore that one time, you have to walk through that room every time you're trying to go. And in a game where you're flipping to each room separately, that becomes a little bit tiresome. When you have to go to like 4 different rooms to get from one place to another, it becomes a little bit annoying.
A little more consolidation of some of those would have been appreciated. But I will say, I wonder how much of the pace of flipping is dictated by everybody wanting to move forward as quickly as possible. Because I definitely felt this is another thing that's kind of trouble with a cooperative graphic novel like this. Like I said, I feel like you're moving through rooms faster than you would if you were reading a bunch of stuff. I think that you're also then beholden to whoever the fastest processor is in your group. And if somebody's very quick to process and move on, they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go over here. And that can kind of change the pacing of that game for any kind of game group.
Yeah, well, it's also because you don't know if everybody else sees the number that you're seeing there. So you want to say, oh, I want to go to the spot because you want to make sure that they know it's a thing.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody may see it and it just may come off as you being pushy.
Yeah.
Now let's get to them tiny numbers.
Tell me about some tiny numbers.
Some of the numbers, this also has hidden numbers like Captive does.
Yeah.
But some of the numbers in these books are incredibly well hidden.
Yes.
There were definitely some panels where we knew there had to be something that could be done because we had gone to everything in this area and it was all pointing in this direction. There had to be something. And some of those numbers were
obfuscated.
Minuscule. A particular portion where we were looking at some statues jumps to mind immediately.
Yeah. Okay.
Where the numbers were small enough that if you were not in a well-lit room, you'd never know they were there.
Okay.
And luckily, we weren't playing this at home because our house has a
lighting issue.
It has a perpetual state of dusk.
Yes.
We were playing this at Tamara's house, and she has strong light bulbs, and we were able to find those numbers, but only because we did our darndest to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Art great. Numbers could have been slightly larger.
Yeah, I'll give you that. How did you feel about the balance of different characters' abilities in this one? Like, could everybody do something that was unique and special?
I feel like over the long run, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Since we only played one island, I definitely feel like some characters had more powerful abilities than others.
Okay.
Like, maybe our island leaned towards the talking to animals thing more than another island might. But I think there was only one spot on the island where my character's special ability could have been used, and I wasn't the one who was sent there. So I didn't get to use it. That's fine. Like, my special ability wasn't the thing that the whole game was riding on for me. But I don't think that every individual adventure uses every person's power equally.
Okay.
But I would venture to guess the whole campaign probably has a pretty good splattering, but that's a guess.
Yeah. Once we're able to, would you be interested to play more of these? More runs through this? Or are you more likely to just play more Captive?
I mean, I'll probably play Captive through another time before we're through this.
Yeah.
And then maybe that'll be it with that. I'm not entirely sure that I need all of Crusoe Crew, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't my favorite.
Okay.
Which is a shame. I really wanted to love it because it's so adorable and because I do like this sort of graphic novel adventure style of game. But I just don't think it worked as well with 4.
I gotcha. I would really like to go through 1 or 2 more runs just to see, what other stuff we get out of this and what kind of, new fun puzzles come at you from a different run or a different island, some stuff like that. Okay. And maybe even play 2 of the different characters just to see how different it does feel. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't not play it with you if we were like, I really want to play Crusoe Crew and we had a group together.
Yeah.
How do you feel about player count?
I wouldn't play it without 4.
Yeah.
Just because then you're missing out on some characters. Like, you can play it with less than 4. I just don't see why you would. And it is always tough to get exactly 4 for a game group. Unless you just plan in advance, which I guess is a thing that people are allowed to do.
It's a double date night game where you all pretend to be siblings.
That's
weird.
Yeah. I'm going to strike that from the record, but not the podcast. So, moving on, that was the Crusoe Crew. Those are 2 of the different graphic novel adventures that you can check out from Van Ryder Games.
Next.
Yay. Danielle, Choose Your Own Adventure, House of Danger, 2018 release from Z-Man Games. Plays 1 to 99 players.
I was also surprised.
Does it say that on the box?
Yes, it does.
Oh, dear. In about 60 minutes, quote unquote. Designed by Prospero Hall and art by Forrest Pruzan Creative, which is Prospero Hall.
I thought it was the Choose Your Own Adventures people.
Is it? I don't know. Anyway, it's a game of choosing, adventuring, and every cheesy, scary sci-fi trope in one. This is the most mechanically intense game that we're going to talk about in the recent plays.
Yeah.
Just in the recent plays.
That's true.
Danielle, choose us an adventure.
Okay, so we actually got this when it came out. Back, it was like a Target exclusive for a minute, wasn't it?
I bought this at Target when I was in like a big solo games kind of mode.
You were in that mode for a minute.
Yeah.
But we've had this for a while.
For a long time.
And it sat on our shelf, and it almost got given away a couple of times because I think you had gotten some negative buzz originally or something.
I mean, I had purchased it, started to look at it, and then I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And then I put it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I picked it up a week ago because I was like, we have this thing. We might as well give it a shot.
It's perfect for this
episode.
I have
some downtime while I'm waiting for emails to come in. Let me just look at this. Nobody tell my boss. So I opened the box. I'm like, okay, what is this thing? This is clearly, obviously, like a weird. It's not hard sci-fi for sure. It is some soft sci-fi, but it is very clearly that style of thing, which is way more your thing than my thing.
B-movie schlock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And while I love a good terrible movie, not this kind. So I was like, okay, let me see what this is. Take it out. It's got a little bit of a board. This is the first time we've seen a board this episode.
I don't know what's going on with boards anymore.
It's got a board.
Yep.
And the board gives you places to put a couple of different decks of cards. You have your deck of story cards, which sits under a card which has the book cover on it. They're tarot-sized cards, so they are a little bit easier to read, which is nice. And you can see the book cover art better, I guess. There are clue cards, which are just numbered 1 through whatever, I think 107, if I remember correctly. And they are each separated into a chapter pack. You've got a chapter 1 story cards pack, and you've got a chapter 1 clue cards pack. So you've got 10 packs of cards in total. You've also got some pawns that are going to mark off some stuff on the board. The board has 2 tracks. It has a psychic track. You're going to start at space 3 on your psychic track, and it has a danger meter. As things get more dangerous, they get harder to do. It also comes with a die, which you will use to do your tests against the danger meter.
The set of components in this is like somebody was just told, like, you're making a board game. Put in some board game components. And they're like, all right, there's a board, a pawn, a cube, and a die. Yeah. I don't know. Figure it out. Let's have
bunch of cards.
Cards. It is the most, like, make a board game set of components that I've ever seen.
Yes, that is true. But I will say that everything in this game does what it needs to do.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly fine.
It is the exact amount of cheese of components that I wanted.
The cheese starts at the very beginning. When you flip over the board after you've set it up, and you look at the back of the board for 2 minutes. It has a picture on it that is theoretically supposed to help you through the game. I have not yet figured out how it helps, even in my playthrough and watching your playthrough. Don't know why you need those 2 minutes.
Yeah, no. And also, I don't remember anything from that coming into play in any way.
No, and there's not 2 minutes worth of stuff there. There is about a minute's worth of stuff. You don't need to do that when you play this game.
We're going to have some fun here.
So you put your pawns on the tracks, on the spaces it tells you to. 3 on the psychic track, bottom of the danger meter, not very dangerous yet.
Danger.
And you take your deck of cards, and you read the first couple of cards, which just are the introduction. And then you read the first story card. And it gives you a passage setting up where you're going. You're going to the Marsden Manor, a house.
Oh, a house in this episode? I can't imagine.
In this episode. And you are going to get to the end of the first card. It'll say continued on the back. Read the back of the first card. At the bottom of it, there'll be a choice. Do you want to do this? If you want to do this, go to this story number card. Flip through the deck, get that card.
Which adventure will you choose?
If you prefer to do the other thing, go to the other number card. You keep the deck perpetually under the book cover card, so you're not seeing what's on the top card the whole time, which is nice. It was an unnecessary component that makes the game better. And you're going to continue going until you die.
You will.
Or you end the game. More likely, you're going to die first. At which point, you do what the card that killed you says. It's usually move your psychic abilities down like 2 spaces and start again. Go back to the last card you were on before you blew yourself up, shot yourself in the foot, did whatever you did that you're now dead. You go back to that card, which conveniently is on the top of the discard pile for the cards.
Yay!
Because as you go to locations and you finish up with those cards, you create a discard pile for the story cards. For all the jokes that we are making about the mechanics in this game, it has a very convenient mechanic system. It may tell you to draw some clue cards. If you do, you take the clue cards from the clue deck. Whatever number they told you to take, you read it. If it's a thing you keep it. If it's just more story, you discard it. You keep going until you get to the end of the chapter. Early in each chapter, you are going to receive a clue which gives you the goal for that chapter. In the first chapter, this is not going to spoil anything for anyone, it's to get into the house.
Yay.
So you have this card sitting up in a little cutout at the top of your board that says, get into the house. When you do that, there will be a green bordered box which matches the color of the border on the goal card that says, you completed goal for chapter 1. You have the option, I think it's at the end of every story, and it happens once in the middle of a chapter.
Yeah.
That you have the option to jump back to some previous branching points. And you will increase your danger by however much because you're going back into the thing that you've just escaped. And they already know you were there. And you can go back and try to collect different items that you may not have collected. And it'll sort of push you towards places that you can get things which may be useful later in the story. Maybe they won't be. Maybe you'll choose an adventure that doesn't require those items. But you can go back, and once you do that, you then have to get to the goal again. Anything that has increased your danger meter can't do so again. Anything that has given you or taken from you psychic ability can't do so again. Those are essentially burned out. But you can go back, and if you encounter any new dangers, they sure can hurt you or increase your danger meter or mess with your psychic meter. But once you've finished the chapter and you decide you'd like to move on to the next chapter, you just unwrap the next pack of cards, the story cards, the clue cards, put the old ones back in the box, move on. When you get to the end of the 5th chapter, you will be very aware that you're at the end of the story, and you're done.
Yes.
How did you feel about this game once I made you play it?
I love cheese. Like as a food, but also like the campiness of this game fit Choose Your Own Adventure so perfectly well. Like, I made a lot of jokes about the components. I'm like, oh, there's a pawn, a cube, and a die. That's all you need in a game. But, like, I think it's intentionally done. And the art is retro and, you know, classic homage enough to make this look as if this was a game that was made when the Choose Your Own Adventure series books came out long ago.
I mean, it's based on a real Choose Your Own Adventure book.
Yeah, no, I know. But like the board component and stuff like that, all that stuff looks like it's the exact perfect replica of everything else that is in the Choose Your Own Adventure series of books. And the campiness of it is 100% there as well. Everything about this felt cheesy as heck, but it was so tongue-in-cheek funny in so many ways that I just really like. It made me want to go back and read these books again, because I have read The House of Danger way back when, decades ago. Because I've read through all of these because I was a kid at some point, and I like, reading Choose Your Own Adventure books. But just like, it felt so right to play through this, and like the decisions and the outcomes and stuff that happen with the mechanics, and it's just like, okay, this makes perfect sense. But then they add in stuff like that back of the board picture thing you're supposed to memorize. I'm just like, this is the dumbest thing why is this here? But it's so perfectly right for that feel. And I like, for the first 2.5 chapters, I read the entire thing out loud.
You did. You got your voices mixed up. It was real fun.
I got my voices mixed up after a while, which is not surprising. But it's a lot of fun. And I gotta say, mechanically, this thing worked super well. We talked about how you have your deck of cards there, and you're flipping through as you're choosing adventures. You're going from one card to the next, and you're creating your discard pile. It was so much easier, especially having just played through some of the graphic novel adventures, flipping back and forth in these books. It's so much easier to manipulate this stuff on cards in a way that I remember when this came out, I'm just like, well, this is silly that we're making a game out of a book. But I'm just like, they improved the quality of life so much over doing this on a piece of paper book.
The other thing that cards have are 2 sides. Mm-hmm. So if you have something that you want to keep a surprise, you can put it on the back of the card. A lot of the card breaks were not at the bottom of the first card.
Yeah.
They put as much text as they felt was necessary, and then you flip it over, and you get the illustration or whatever, or you get the choices on the back, and you aren't able to see it. Whereas in the books, you could always like kind of peek at what the picture was, or see at the bottom of the passage what was going to be there. Where here they have the option to hide whatever they don't want you to see immediately.
Yeah, it was a really fantastically self-aware use of the medium, which is something that I don't ever think about talking about in board games. Like, we talk about fourth wall breaking in time stories and escape tales and stuff like that, but this was a very self-awareness kind of fourth wall breaking, where it was using the medium of the cards to conceal secrets, or giving you items in a fun way that interact with the other cards. There was 1 or 2 things where a card will go on to another card in some way, and it's just really smart that I had not expected from something that looks like a cash-in.
Yeah, and a lot of the sort of Target exclusives were cash-ins. So
a lot were, yeah.
This was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
I do have to say, like, they make a deal of the fact that you can stop between chapters. If you can avoid it, I would suggest not, because there is, like, you're just going to have to pack the stuff back up into the box and hope that nothing gets messed around.
It's not like it's that long. I mean, like, I got through the entire thing in 2 hours. Easy.
Oh, yeah. And it's fun and goofy the whole way through. If you have the time to do it, I would just play through this. But if you do have to stop, I did like that the cards were all packaged individually. When I opened the box and opened the first deck, I didn't have to open everything, and I didn't have cards all over the place, which was an extra benefit for us because our insert was broken. The glue on the cardboard inside was not there, so the cards would have just gone all around the inside of the box if I hadn't been able to bag them up.
Oh, no.
So it was nice that they were in packed cards for each of the chapters.
Yeah. Story-wise, it's a completely zany adventure. Unsurprising if you know your Choose Your Own Adventure books and, the series. I thought, like, it progresses well. The adventures are interesting. You always have good choices. You die a lot because you just, do a dumb thing because you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. But it's so easy to go back to that previous chapter. And I didn't have any, like, sequence breaking stuff anywhere in this as well, which is honestly kind of a big surprise as well. I think I got into, like, one snag in one room where I had to go around a few times before I figured out what I needed, or I got my stats up to the right place. But there was no, like, game-breaking thing in this one, which honestly we will talk about in the near future.
Yeah, I didn't experienced anything where I couldn't progress through. I may not have been able to go the way I wanted to go, but I always could do something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're looking for something that really encapsulates the whimsical nature of a Choose Your Own Adventure book, and you're looking for something that has a little bit more of a oddly finessed mechanical system, of something that feels really good to play and you've got a little bit of space you can set it up on, because this is slightly less portable than a novel.
Yeah.
Like, the graphic novel adventures are easier to throw in your bag and go. But if you've got a space that you can set out a game to play, I think this is great for one.
Yeah.
For one, not two,
I don't
not
understand.
three.
How could you play this with more than one person?
I mean,
You just read it together?
yeah.
I guess you
And
technically were playing when I was playing because you had to hear me narrating.
Well, I mean, anybody who had a sibling would understand how you play a choose your own adventure book with two people. One person doesn't get to make a choice.
Danielle, we're both only
I
children.
know. But yeah, I mean, I guess you could do this like game show style,
Okay. Yeah.
but I don't imagine there is any reason why you would want to do that. But it sells games, I guess, to say you can play it with 99 people.
Yeah, sure.
Who knows? Play it with one person.
Play it with yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. Choose Your Own Adventure, House of Danger. I would recommend that one because I don't know anything about the second one, but I have heard rumblings that that's the bad one.
I mean, this is the one we played. I thought it was funny if you like schlocky stuff.
Cool. All right. Well, that is the end of the recent plays. It's time to go on a quick journey into this break.
With everything going on in the world right now, it's really easy to get out of your normal routines, your normal media streams. It's just easy to get into a sort of stay in your house funk and not know about new stuff. I'm really glad we've had a chance to talk about 2 Gray Fox games in the last couple of episodes that aren't necessarily the ones you'd hear about all the time, but that we really enjoyed here.
Yeah.
Draw Your Own Conclusions and Zoned Out are both great titles from Gray Fox Games. And we hope that you get a chance to play them, even if your normal game groups aren't meeting or you're not going to whatever convention you were planning on going to.
Yeah, Draw Your Own Conclusions, really great drawing game for higher player counts. So when you do get a chance to get a few people back together in your game group, awesome opportunity to have some fun drawing. And Zoned Out, 2 to 4 player city building with a lot of really cool pieces and a lot of really awesome mechanics that we're all about. You can pick them up both at grayfoxgames.com or through your local retailer.
Gray Fox Games. Quality games, cleverly crafted.
Danielle, let us return to houses as a context that we are talking about.
Okay, for our 6-pack review, we are talking about Mystery House Adventures in a Box, and not Mystery Box Adventures in a House, as I've been calling it for
I was wondering if you were
a
going
long
to do
time.
that accidentally.
It is a 2019 release from Cranio Creations, which plays 1 to 5 players in 60 minutes. It is designed by Antonio Tinto, with art by Daniela Gubellini and Alessandro Paviolo. This is a game of perspective, hidden clues, and flashlights not being included.
Yeah, Mystery House, Adventures in a Box. We actually have 2 different things we are talking about here because Mystery House is actually a console in a way for different Mystery House adventures. So we have Family Portrait and the Labyrinth one. Lord of the Labyrinth, that's what it's called.
Lord of the Labyrinth.
Which are 2 different modules that come in the Mystery House box when you buy it. So I will basically explain the basic fundamentals of how Mystery House works, and then we will talk about the scenarios as we go into the review. So Mystery House Adventures in a Box is a box which you open up and it has a mysterious house in it. Or rather, it has this kind of giant box with slots on the top and windows on the outside that simulates a house. You have basically 5 windows on each side of the house all the way around it for a total of 20 windows if you're keeping track. This is a 4-sided house. And then in the top of it, there is a crisscrossing grid of holes where you're going to be sliding cards into based on the scenario you're playing. When you open up one of the scenario boxes, you have these different wall cards, basically, that have like A1 and B4. And you're going to start with one side of the box facing you, the A through E, and you're going to slide in A1 and A4 and B2 and so on and so forth, go around. You're going to rotate, go all the way through all 4 sides of the box. This is important because obviously they're double-sided, and some of them are going to show you different things on different sides that you want to have kind of be surprised later on. So maybe, a card that you put in near the center of the house, the boring side will be facing you when you put it in. It is important when you're setting this up to not really look too closely at it, but it's marked clearly which ones you want to have facing you when you're putting it in, so that as you're laying it out, you're going to have the least amount of information as you're going.
There are also some little pop-outs that you need to do on some of those cards, so you do need to look closely enough to know to pop them out, as I did not do when I was setting up the Labyrinth one.
Yeah, and that was actually kind of interesting because the one that I set up Family Portrait, and there were a good bit of pop-outs in that one, and then in the Lord of the Labyrinth, there was only one, and it kind of came up halfway through the game when I shined my flashlight on, I saw the die cut, I'm like, oh, there's that. But basically, after you get the whole thing set up, you'll also have a deck of cards, which are your object cards. Like in all these sorts of games, you're going to discover things as you go on, and those objects are going to be persistent cards that will help you deal with other things or interact in other ways. You also have a digital app you're going to download on your phone or digital device of choice that is going to manage a number of different things. One, it will be your interaction point as you look through the windows of the house and say, I want to interact with what I can see in D4, and it'll give you a list of different things there, and you'll say, oh, I want to look at the door or something like that, or maybe, the eyeball or something like that. There's a giant list of words there. Some of the things that are on the particular page are not present, so you can't just bash wildly to get the answers because you will take penalties if you hit things that are not on that tile. There's also two different ways to interact with any of those spaces. There's being able to use objects. So if I say in D4, I want to use my crowbar, you go to D4, you type an item that is in your inventory because the app keeps track of all what you have, and it'll tell you if that's usable and how it will interact with stuff in that room if it is. The third way you can interact with the space is entering a code, and like in Unlock or Escape Tales, any of these other things, you'll need to enter 3, 4, 5-digit code or character code in order to progress the story based on a riddle or something you see in that particular scenario. The mechanics of looking around the house in this, however, are a lot different than the unlock and exit and stuff like that, in that everything you were doing is looking in the windows of this house. So when we made the comment about flashlights not included, I will say up front, if you don't have a super well-lit room, you're going to need flashlights. And even if you do, probably a good idea to have flashlights so you can kind of shine in the windows and see exactly what you're looking for. We'll talk about more of that when we get to the mechanics part of the stuff. But it is important because as you work your way through, you can see what you can see, but you might be able to see around something, but until you have solved a puzzle that allows you to remove a few cards that represent doors, you might not be able to interact with something that you can kind of see deeper into the house. It's also super important that you're paying attention to everything on everything you can see, because there are little clues that you'll need to remember for other parts of the house. And they do encourage you in the very beginning, you're going to want pen and paper for this one. 100% true. Both of the scenarios we had puzzles. You're going to need some scratch paper to figure out. So this is, like I said, managed by an app which has a timer, and the quote-unquote gamification of it is you have a 60-minute timer, and when that runs out, you go into negative time, and then your score goes down and all that. You also get penalties of 20 or 30 seconds if you do something that you can't do, interact with something that's not there, or do like a wrong solution to a puzzle. There's a hint system in the app as well. If you're stuck on a puzzle or in a room, you can tap for some hints to get an idea of what you need to do or where you might need to look to solve whatever's in that room. But all of these lead towards some final some final puzzle that you've got to solve that will allow you to get, a final code that goes into the epilogue, and then you hear the end of the story, because they are kind of, they are story based. There is a story in each of them, and you're going to want to solve it, because I guess that's why you're here in the first place. But when you're done, you put it all back in the box and you pass it off to somebody else, because this is not really replayable unless you want to try to get a better score, but you already know how to do everything, so it's totally irrelevant.
So you will get a better score.
You will get a better score. Yeah, that's true. But that's it. That's Mystery House. So, yeah. Danielle, did you know anything about this before I brought it home?
No.
Yeah. I had seen people playing with this. It did get a good bit of buzz at conventions just because it's kind of a fun, unique, kind of innovative idea. Like, oh, you've got to look around this house and all this stuff. In terms of, I guess, where we usually start is art and components. Components, I think that the house component is really, really cool. It's a great idea. Functionally and physically, the thing works well. And I feel like you have to look very carefully, and the flashlights and looking through windows and stuff is really cool, and that's a lot of fun. But I think the components thing is going to be one of the biggest things we come back to in this, is that if you have any kind of visual issue whatsoever, you cannot play this game.
Yes, that is true. But before we even want to get into that, because that is a huge thing that I think we want to take a good amount of time on. If you are playing this, I mentioned earlier that our house has a perpetual twilight about it.
Yes.
None of our rooms are well lit. It's just the way the house is and the light fixtures are positioned. None of our rooms are particularly well lit. So you are going to, and I think even if you have a very well lit room, you're going to need a flashlight. This also has a mandatory app. So if one person's running the app on their phone, you can't use the flashlight app on your phone. Yeah. I ended up using the flashlight app on my phone instead of us because we couldn't get our second flashlight to work.
And I ended up using the 18-inch stainless steel mag light.
Giant mag light, yeah. But if you don't have a flashlight and your only flashlight is the flashlight on your phone, then you're going to need to use the thing that everybody needs to access to do anything in the game, and that's just, it's not going to work. Mm-hmm. You're going to need either another device or a flashlight. Flashlight is cheaper.
Yeah.
That being said, like you said, there is no way to play this if you have a visual impairment.
Yeah, not only are there a lot of obviously tiny things you have to see and making out details in weird spaces, there's a lot of color significant stuff, especially in the first one we did, Family Portrait.
True.
And those things combined, you have to know going into this. If you have visual impairments, this will be a challenge for you.
There are also things that you can only see if you're looking with one eye. Like, there were things that were around tight corners. There's absolutely no way. If I couldn't see out of my right eye, I wouldn't have been able to see out of corners to the left of me. Whereas if I could look in with both eyes, like, I could see that. But you know the thing you do where, like, you put your hand on your nose and you can see one side separate from the other?
Okay.
Like, if you put your hand right...
Oh, hey.
And, like, if I were to hold up a piece of paper on one side and you closed one eye, you wouldn't be able to see it with the other eye.
That is how hands work, yeah.
It's how division works, and the division between your eyes works. There were a lot of times where I was looking into this box and I was trying to process what one eye was seeing and what the other eye was seeing, and they weren't the same. So if you have any trouble with one of your eyes, even not even a full visual impairment, just like a partial visual impairment, you're going to have a very difficult time with this.
Yeah. One thing I will say on the other side of that is that when it does work, it feels phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there are so many cool little things that, like, you see one way, or, you know, you just, like, maybe we've rotated the box and I've come back to like something I've looked at 4 or 5 times, and I just kind of like happen to tilt the light in a different way, and I see something, I'm just like, holy crap, that was there the whole time, I never noticed that. And those moments feel awesome, and that is a function of the components, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, especially I think in the second game, there was a time where we removed some barriers because as you progress through the puzzles, it will tell you to remove some barriers so you have access to new portions of the map. And you had looked at one side, and then I was like, oh, can we do a rotate? And I looked at that same side, and I just looked at it. The way I naturally looked at that box was in a completely different way, and I saw a whole different room that you hadn't seen because it wasn't the way that your mind thought to look at that side.
Yeah, and one thing I will say with this, we played it 2 players because we are trapped in a house with the cat, and he can't play board games with us. He can sleep, though. He's sleeping right now. But this thing allegedly can play up to 5 players. I do not understand how you could do this with 4 players unless you just get it like balanced up on a thing and everybody is sitting in the perfect exact angle. Because of the way you're manipulating the box and kind of like moving around it, it would be a struggle with 4 players.
That is a thing worth pointing out. Like, when you set this up, I wouldn't recommend setting it up flat on the table.
Yeah.
I would stack up a couple of boxes or books or whatever, set it at eye level for you sitting at the table. And I think 2 players is the ideal player count. Because with 4, everybody would get their own side, but putting things into the app would be too congested.
And that's the other real struggle about this, is that the app can only be used by one person. There's no game share code where everybody's looking on their own device, which I guess is good for mechanical purposes because it has to keep track of what you've found, what you've removed, stuff like that. But it does mean if both of 2 players or 3 players are all trying to come up with a solution or look at something at the same time, there's a bottleneck there because only so many people can interact with the phone at the time, that so many being 1. Maybe you could do it with 3 if you did it on the end of a table and it was like really well balanced. But like, if you want to see a picture of our setup, actually the image that I'm using for this episode's cover image on draftmechanic.net or your podcast player if it supports it shows the stack of games that we have the mystery house situated on. So you can see exactly like what we mean by that. You're going to have to set this thing up on a pedestal to kind of get the best angle for viewing. And then you got to use your flashlight at the right angle as well because, oh boy, there's some shininess.
Yeah, the cards are slightly reflective, which I guess is probably better than them having a linen finish because then they'd have a completely different problem with the texture. But as you're shining a very bright light on something that's like 3 inches away from it, there's going to be a little bit of reflection on these cards. And there were definitely times where I just took my flashlight and I shone it down. It says, play in the brightest room you have available.
Yeah.
I just took my flashlight and put it on top of the house, which is cool and spooky looking because it looks like everything's lit from above and only shining directly down.
Yeah.
But it also gave you a non-direct lighting angle. I also tried bouncing it off a white box, but I guess we don't have a photographic reflective screen.
Something I found most useful, I actually had my flashlight shining up into the ceiling of the box because the ceiling is a reflective white plastic.
Oh, true.
So I could most often see effectively into a room by shining up and kind of illuminating the ceiling and using that in the way that you wanted to use the white box.
But a lot of times, like, if you shine your flashlight up, you're not going to get light on the things that you wanted to get light on as well.
Yeah. But then this all comes back to the initial kind of component kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? The catch about it is that it is designed to be difficult to see because that's where the excitement is when you see something. Like, it's a very kind of limiting component.
Yes.
And I don't know how you could do this in a less limiting way while preserving a lot of that discovery kind of fundamental, because this is a very visual discovery kind of game.
Yeah.
Moving on to, rulebook. Rulebook was pretty straightforward. It told you how to set up the thing. It told me about how, some of the different mechanics work, how to use the app. Pretty much all of the progress of the game is developed or is defined through the app. So that's smooth and easy and not super complicated. Each of the scenarios, there's no rules that are different in each of the scenarios. They're exactly the same in this box in that you have cards you're getting and components and the stuff you're sliding into the box. It's exactly the same in all those ways. So really easy there. Did you have any quote unquote learning curve on this one?
No.
No, because it's a thing you can only play one time and then you're moving on with it.
One of the things that frustrated me when we very, very first started was that you can't use items with other items. Mm-hmm. Because I'm used to like an unlock where you can use an item with another card that you have. And I was trying to do that, and that's not something you can do in this game. You can only use items with locations, but that's not a learning curve thing. That's like, oh, I needed to pay attention to what the rules were. Yeah,
and there's no like, I think like in Unlock you would have like a key card and battery
a
or
lock
something,
or
and those things would go together to function a machine. There's none of that. If you had that, you would have to plug in the battery in the key in the location, and then you would have to use the key card in the location. And thankfully, the app keeps track of stuff like that. There was a sequence of cards we had to use in one of them, for example.
2 of them.
And the sequence of cards, once you use card A and then you use card B reacts in a different way, and then you use card C and that reacts in a different way. I did like the way that the app manages those states.
Yeah.
I felt that was very useful. we can't really do any kind of like, how did your gameplay feelings change over multiple plays, again, because these are one-time things. But I feel like the kind of point we would talk about here is, how did you feel 15, 30, 45 minutes into a scenario?
An hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes.
And that's what I kind of want to get to eventually. In that first 15 to 20 minutes, I'm so excited because I feel like this is a really interesting mechanic. It's a new, innovative way to do one of these kind of puzzles. I'm actually surprised in a way that this isn't featured as a BGG Innovative Game of the Year for 2019. And I think it's just because a lot of people didn't play it, and it's not, one of the top 15 most popular games on Board Game Geek, which is what, it kind of looks like right now in the innovative category. But it does a really interesting thing. Nobody is playing with the escape room game space in this kind of thing. There's obviously ones that, use moving around a deck of cards, or there's stuff in a book, or there's ones that have components like the Exit or the Escape the Room series where you have like the trinkets and stuff, but never like a really exploratory kind of scenario like this.
Yeah,
and
it's like a dollhouse.
Yeah. And at the very beginning of both scenarios, which we played back to back, it felt like, oh man, this is really, really cool. I feel like I'm learning a lot, and it's totally different. This is something new that I haven't experienced before in this space.
Yeah, I mean, I felt throughout the game like it was engrossing and exciting. I said to you after we played the first one, which I don't feel like this is a super spoiler, it has some ghost feelings to it. Like they tell you at the beginning of the game that like you see this house and you don't remember this house being here.
Yeah.
So like there's obviously something weird going on here. And there were times where I was trying to see around those tight corners where I was leaning in, and I half expected there to be like a ghost illustration there that you couldn't see until you looked all the way around this really tight corner that was going to be like a ghost jumping out at you.
Scare.
Which would be absolutely impossible because these are just cards that are sitting in a cardboard box.
The cards only move when you move. Bringing that one back in from a few years ago.
Oh, God, super hot.
Yep.
But I expected that from this thing, which obviously, like, it was an expectation I did not think I would have, but that kept me engrossed in it.
Mm-hmm. I felt the same way. Like, it was thematically exciting and interesting and enthralling to work into these things with a few major hang-ups.
Yeah, let's talk about puzzles.
Both of the scenarios had in at least one impenetrable or obtuse puzzle. And in the case of one of them, we did not understand. Well, actually, no. In one for each of them, we did not understand how to get to the solution. One, we could not find one or two pieces of information, which were allegedly somewhere visible to solve that puzzle. And then the other one, a sequence of directions we were given, led us to a place that was not clear as to, a clear answer.
And I feel differently about them.
Okay.
The one where we were missing information, that's partially on us. We probably could have seen that information if we had looked for it.
If we had the most amazing eyes.
If we had the most amazing eyes. If it was probably there to be found.
Mm-hmm.
But the app provided hints that were helpful. It was a middle puzzle. It was not the end puzzle of the game. And it gave you hints, and eventually it just gave you the thing you needed to do or the information you needed to have found to solve the puzzle. And then you solve the puzzle and put the information into the app. That felt like a bummer we didn't get the puzzle. I love to get a puzzle. Puzzles are good. We're puzzle people. But it gave me the information I needed to continue having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
The second time that happened, when we were given information that in hindsight makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I understand what they were saying, but the signposting on what to do with the information they were giving you was vague at best, missing at more accurate.
Yes.
And the hints that were given for that puzzle when you went through the hint section did not clear it up.
Mm-hmm.
So what we eventually had to do is go online and be like, okay, we have this.
Yeah.
We have this answer.
We know where this is supposed to go.
What do we do with it?
And it's never a good sign for your puzzle game if when you go on BGG, it's incredibly easy to find where everybody got stuck. Because that just means that something wasn't signposted as clearly as they thought it would be. The other thing that was super frustrating about this to me, and this is, again, a surface level complaint, but I feel like it's something that should have been caught, is the absurd amount of typos and spelling errors on the app. There was a lot of spelling errors on the narrative parts and also even on some of the actual like items you were supposed to search for. Like one of them is coat rack, but it's spelled core rack, COAR rack. And that's not a thing. That's not even a word. There's a number of really obvious quote unquote spelling errors and just weird grammatical things in this that were in the rule book, in the narrative part of the app, and then things like this. I'm just like, I don't know how this wasn't caught. And it was really breaking of the immersion for me in a way. Yeah,
and I can see how that would be troublesome because there are also written documents that you needed to pay attention to that had markings on them that were important.
Yeah.
I didn't read the rule book, and you read, I think, both epilogues, so I probably did not see that. The only one I remember seeing was the core rack.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's not a thing, so I know what it's supposed to say. I didn't run into that issue, but that's just probably because I did not read a lot of the written stuff that was going on. So I guess kind of what we can move on to there. Obviously, they're not replayable. No. We've already kind of talked about our feelings on the player count. I think 2 is the good spot, maybe 3 if you want. 4, I guess, if everybody can find the perfect table to crowd around. And you're very, very patient. Yeah, but I feel like then you're going to feel lousy about your score at the end because you're going to take forever trying to input all this stuff.
And then I guess we kind of want to talk about the actual scoring of it. We talked about the last Escape Tales, about how I feel scoring has become irrelevant to these kind of games. For me, as somebody who wants to solve puzzles and experience a narrative, if this was just a straight solving puzzles for a score, I could understand a timer. I could understand, hint penalties. But if this is something that we want to have a narrative story in, we don't need to have scores, because realistically, it's a 60-minute timer. We took an hour 20 on the first one and an hour 45 on the second one. And some of that was because of the broken freaking puzzles.
Yeah, but a lot of it was because we were looking around and it was hard to see.
Yeah, true.
I feel like my answer to that is, if it's not a thing you care about, then just don't care about it.
Yeah, I didn't. And we just kind of moved on with it because we would have got 0 stars on all of them. I didn't even wait for the last one.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. If you want to get a good score, I don't know how you'd get a better score.
I mean,
you can't play through it again and reasonably do it again.
Yeah, no, scores are just whether or not you get through it good the first time.
So, just do it to have fun if you want to do that. And if you're really concerned about the score, pay attention to the score.
Yeah.
But I feel like you're just going to do it as well as you can.
Mm-hmm. And if the score is completely irrelevant in that, then you need to have better proofreading on the puzzles. Because I enjoyed, like I said, the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes were fantastic. But there came a time in both of them where I just sat there for 5 minutes. I'm just like, this is not relevant. I cannot make any more progress right now because we've been staring at the same wall tile for the last 10 minutes. And I'm just like, this is exhausting at this point for me.
We probably should have taken hints quicker then.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I didn't reach that point at any point in either game until the end of the second one, when we got to the puzzle that had bedside and posting.
Yeah. But it's just it's frustrating in a way to not have push, have something that'll push you towards it. Hey, you've been sitting on this one for a while or something like that. Or, hey, the app could, every 5 minutes, did you think about this? Something like this. Or, I don't even know.
This is a games are hard. Time.
Yeah, this is a games are hard, quote unquote, conversation. And I just feel like the scoring in this one diminished my experience because it was there, but it wasn't needed.
But maybe it's important to somebody.
Okay.
If it does not matter to you, don't pay attention to it.
Okay. Well, I won't then.
I don't know. That feels to me like a complaint that's sort of symptomatic of larger problems. If it's a thing that doesn't bother you, but you don't care about it, just don't care about it.
Okay, cool. So between the two scenarios, did you have any kind of feelings on either one?
I like the first one better than the second one.
Well, which one's the first one? You should tell people.
I liked Family Portrait better than Lord of the Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed looking around the spooky house more than I enjoyed sort of the mythological labyrinth puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also may have been because I feel like the wall tiles were they had a little bit more character. When we started looking at the Lord of the Labyrinth one, some of the brick tiling looks like a pattern, but it is just what they've used as the brick tiling pattern for the cards on that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was part of some puzzle because it was repeating, but it was just they used the art asset again.
I remember the first wall that I looked at, I said, okay, 2 of these are exactly the same and only one of them is different. Is there some way that I can interact with this one? But it was just no, we just only had so many arts.
Yeah, that's just how they did the art. But I like looking around the spooky house. I will say that while this game does say it is for 14 plus on it.
Oh boy.
One of them is much more 14 plus than the other.
Mystery House is definitely not for young.
I mean, it's not the worst thing.
No, but
the story on Family Portrait particularly is a dark story.
I feel like Family Portrait should get the same kind of caveat that we talk about with Captive or Escape Tales: The Awakening. Hey, know that you're getting into some heavier child stuff.
Yeah, but there is not gore. I will say that
true.
There's not gore in Family Portrait.
Yeah.
There's not even ghosts drawn around the corner like I thought there would be.
I know you really wanted a ghost.
But there is not gore in it, but it is like when we sat down at the end of it and I was like, so here's what happened.
Oh boy.
It's like, it's a rough story.
Yeah.
But it is not fleshed out in a detailed way to make it make the jump between a rough story and like, I had to sit there and take a moment to get my shit together.
Yeah.
But it's not like don't play it with an 8-year-old.
Yeah. It's not
they won't be very useful.
It's not Estrella Drive heavy, but it's still worth being aware that you're getting into a heavier story.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one, Lord of the Labyrinth, it is very much Labyrinth kind of David Bowie kind of weirdness.
Yeah.
It's fun. But like both of them, the idea of Mystery House is super exciting to me. And I'm really hoping that they continue to play with this and mechanically refine it, because I think the idea is phenomenal. And I'm waiting for that scenario that just crushes it.
Well, the other expansion is like an Old West town thing, right?
I do like an Old West story from here and there.
Assuming that they make it. It's still non-released. But
And who knows if anything ever gets released ever again at this point. But like realistically, if I can buy another module for Mystery House for $15-$20, I'll probably do it, just because I think that there is a cool idea here.
Okay, so let's get down to sort of the end idea. Would you recommend, did you enjoy? And this game, I feel, I'm going to sort of spoil my answer, that those are two different things.
Yes. So the final thoughts, as it were?
Final thoughts, as it were.
Danielle, finally your thoughts at me.
I enjoyed this game, but I probably would not recommend you buy it. And it's not because I don't want you to have fun. It's because to say that I recommend this game assumes that I know a lot of things about your playing situation that I don't.
Yes.
If you cannot see very well, or if you are going to play with a bunch of people who can't see small stuff, if you don't want to like crawl around a box on your table, if you don't have a well-lit space to play in, if you don't have a smartphone or an iPad or whatever, a tablet device or something to play this on, you can't play it. There is no way to play it without the application. Mm-hmm. If you don't own flashlights and don't want to buy them, can't play this game.
No,
also,
not allowed.
Weird hill. But like, I'm not going to say that you should absolutely have this game, because for a lot of people, they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. If you don't have any of those restrictions and this sounds fun and you want to like have this little exploratory dollhouse feel, get it. I loved it. Like, I thought it was super fun and I wanted to play another one after we played 2 of them right in a row, but there are no more. I like it, but I'm not sure I'd recommend it.
Yeah. For my final thoughts, I would say that despite being occasionally broken and incredibly limited field of accessibility, if you're an escape room puzzle kind of fanatic and you love these kind of things, Mystery House does things in a way that nobody else is doing it right now. It's a unique component that innovates in the puzzle space. And I really hope that there are more scenarios to take advantage of the promise of this function, of this console of Mystery House, because there's a lot of cool ideas that could come out of this, and we just got to find the one that isn't broken. Yeah, so that's where it is. But I feel like after this break, maybe we'll come back and give you some beers to pair up when you go on your Mystery House adventure in a box.
I certainly hope we will. I made a list.
Mystery beers, adventures in a glass after this break.
For more information on the beers we chose to pair with today's game on tap, check out the show notes section at our website, draftmechanic.net.
Beers on tap for Mystery House Adventures in a Box, the 2019 release from Cranio Creations, plays 1 to 5 players allegedly in 60 minutes allegedly. Designed by Antonio Tinto with art by Daniela Giubilini and Alessandro Paviolo. A game of perspective, hidden clues, and flashlights that are not included. Danielle, what is the first beer?
First, from Liquid Riot Bottling Company in Portland, Maine, we have What's in the Box. It's a double IPA, which is 8.4% ABV and 40 IBU. It's a double IPA using a blend of Northern and Southern Hemisphere hops. It is dry hopped twice and was available in 16-ounce cans. One thing I do want to say is I didn't expect this to be a problem with making on taps, but because so many breweries are moving only to curbside pickup or delivery or takeout or whatever, a lot of breweries have really streamlined their website to facilitate that process. This was available recently, but it is not available to buy right now at their app pickup, so I don't know if you can still get this one. That is the case for the first two.
Okay.
They were recently available, and I know they're cyclical, but I don't know if you can get it right now. They still sound really good, and they work for this game, so I wanted to make sure to include them. But that is what's in the box.
All right. Well, next up is Triple Crossing in Richmond, Virginia. Their beer is called Sightlines. It's an American IPA at 6% ABV. It is a West Coast-influenced IPA, kettle and dry hopped, with Simcoe, Citra, and Chinook hops. This is fruit up front and pine in the finish. It's like an IPA mullet. This was released in 16-ounce cans, but it seems to be rotating. So who knows when it will cross your sight lines again.
And
what a good pun. Ha.
Triple Crossing also seems to have a presence in the DC area. They've got their Richmond facility, but they've also got something up closer to DC. So if you are in the Northern Virginia area, that might be an option for you.
All right.
From Loose Rail Brewing in Canal, Winchester, Ohio, we've got Searchlight, which is a shandy, which is 4.1% ABV, and it is a sweet peach shandy.
Sweet peach.
The Loose Rail Brewing Company is doing to go, and they're working with an app called Toast App, I believe it's called, up in that area. This was on the last tap list that they had posted on their Instagram, so you might still be able to get it on that to-go app. I don't have the Toast app, and I'm not going to call them up and be like, hey, I want to order some beer. I'm not in Ohio.
Hey, I just want to know
I want to waste your time.
Tell me about this beer so we can talk about it on our podcast.
But it was recently available.
Yes. Next up, from Buxton Brewery in Buxton, Derbyshire, England, we have Matters of Perspective. It's an American IPA, 6.6% ABV. It's a collab with Verdant Brewing in Falmouth, Cornwall. This is an IPA double dry hop with Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe, and Huguenot hops. Available in 12-ounce cans.
Huguenot used to be Equinox, if you are confused.
Yeah. Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
We
did do that recently,
yeah.
didn't we?
Humble Forager Brewery in Waukene, Wisconsin has their Elevated Perspective series because you gotta elevate the box.
Gotta move the box up.
See it in there.
It's gotta look.
This is a series of beers. It is always a double IPA, but they are all about using local ingredients and what they can get freshly available.
All about those rotating hop profiles.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 3 series of beer. One of them is this Elevated Perspective, but they're never like, oh, we have this beer and this beer and this beer. It's like we have this double IPA, we have this porter, we have this other thing. I don't remember what the third one is. It wasn't relevant because it wasn't Elevated Perspective. The current Elevated Perspective is Vic's Secret and Galaxy hops and Sultana, and it is 8% ABV.
Cool.
So it is worth giving a shot if you are near Waukene, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. Well, you, dear listener, can find information about all of those beers on our website, draftmechanic.net. If you click the show notes section up at the top, Danielle will have put some links into the website page for you to click and see brewery websites that aren't as formative as we wish they would be. You can also go to boardgames.beer, which is an actual human website that I pay real money for, and I feel contractually obligated at this point by myself to say this at this point of the episode. Boardgames.beer. Great beer, cleverly websited.
Don't steal their thing.
All right, Danielle. Well, let's move on to a beer primer.
We got a hop primer. It's Summit hops this week.
Summit hops. What a randomly selected hop.
Yes.
Yes.
Summit hops are a patented variety which was bred by Roger Jeske for the American Dwarf Hop Association, though it is technically a semi-dwarf variety. And they were released in 2003. Story time. In 1999, a male plant that was the result of open pollination nugget hop seeds, essentially to make a nugget plant that was fair use, because nugget is a proprietary hop.
Nugs.
So they open pollinated it and they made a new plant, and they're like, no, this isn't nugget, it's like something else, don't worry about it. And then they crossed that with a female Zeus hop plant. This plant, which was a male plant, was called USDA 19058. Don't need to remember that number, not really important. What is important is that they then crossed that male plant with another female Zeus plant to make what is known as Lexus hops. That is a different variety, which got patented.
Those are just Toyota hops with a new coat of paint, right?
That's a very good joke.
You knew that was coming.
I know. In 2000, a female Lexus plant was open pollinated, and the seeds from this open pollination were planted in Roger Jeske's greenhouse. Boom, Summit hops.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Good job, Rob.
So Summit draws its lineage directly from the Zeus and Nugget hops and through Lexus. As they were doing some test plantings in 2001, they realized that Summit was a semi-dwarf variety. I'm not sure how it took them this long to figure this out, but they did.
Everybody was just sitting down until then.
Maybe he'll just have a growth spurt.
Yeah.
So they know it's a semi-dwarf variety. What's cool about that is that semi-dwarf varieties require shorter trellises, and they can often be picked without removing the plant from the roots, which makes for a healthier plant. Summit hops are also resistant to powdery mildew, verticillium wilt, and Phytophthora root rot. So they require fewer pesticides, which if you're an organic farmer, that's good news. The Summit hops were patented in 2007, but apparently some rhizomes of Summit were accidentally sold to the public in 2011. We accidentally sold our proprietary hop to people who are growing it in their backyard. Oops.
Whoopsie-daisy.
It looks like if you look around, most of those plants died. So they're not really available anymore. It's a problem that sort of solved itself. But every once in a while you hear somebody like, oh, I've got some Summit hops growing. Which they're not supposed to because it's supposed to be proprietary. But oops, the people who were selling it done screwed up.
Whoopsie.
Summit plants top out at about 16 feet when you look at the vine length, which is shorter than your 20-foot trellises that you put up for normal hops. So like I said, it's a semi-dwarf, so it's a little bit shorter. Okay. And they are adapted for the drier regions, but when I say drier regions, I mean by Washington state standards, so still, not super dry. They are extremely high in alpha acids. There are 16 to 19% alpha acids.
Oof.
And they are described most often as spicy and herbal. They've got notes of incense, anise, and black pepper. There's often an onion and garlic-like character, which is due to that high alpha acid content. Less prominent, there are slight aromas of orange, grapefruit, tangerine, and mango. So not really citrusy fruits. Like we've been talking about all kinds of really fruity hops over the last several hop primers. This is not that. It's got a little bit of fruit, but it's not the predominant thing, and it's not like you're really, really bright like grapefruits and pineapples and that kind of thing. Well, a little bit of grapefruit, but not like pineapple and passion fruit and all that. Summit is predominantly used as a bittering hop, which is the first time I think that we're talking about a hop in one of these hop primers that is predominantly for bittering, not a multi-use or predominantly an aroma hop. It's because of those high alpha acids that we were talking about. Some people report that with late addition hopping, you don't get an oniony smell at all. No, you only get it if you use it in the boil. Some people say, like, if you put it in late addition, it's super oniony, which makes more sense. But there's not a whole lot of consensus across that field because most people don't use it as a late addition hop. It's really good as a bittering hop because you can use less of it, which A, means you need to buy fewer hops if you're the person who has to buy the hops, and B, means that there are fewer hops for you to clean out of your kettle if you're the person who needs to clean the hops. Everybody likes it as a bittering hop. Real good. Everything I found that listed only using some hops was rated pretty poorly as far as flavor. Like the threshold I normally use for recommending anything, unless I've personally had it and think that the ratings are absolute BS, which very rarely but will occasionally happen, and I will always tell you about it, is 3.5 stars on out of 5 on Untapped. If it has a rating below that, I generally just won't talk about it because it's either really polarizing or just not good.
Unsurprisingly, Revolution Brewing did not do a Summit Hero.
No, I mean, there weren't anything of the lists, like a lot of the links that I will put in the show notes, you'll see list, specifically the kegerator links, list, if you're looking for a beer that only uses these hops, here are a couple of options. If you're looking for ones that use these hops predominantly but use them in a mix with these other hops, here are some other options. Mm-hmm. I looked up the ones that they listed for only Summit hops. A, they were very rare, and B, none of them were above like 3.3. And then one of the other links that I'm going to put in the show notes listed some other beers. They were also very rare and very low rated. So let's go with Summit hops not being your single hop of choice if you're looking for it. It's great at bittering and can bring some really interesting flavors because it does have that complex, like little oniony, little garlicky, a little bit of fruit, a lot of anise and incense and that type of thing. Spicy and herbal, but you're going to want something else to balance it out on the back end to finish it out and give you those nice aroma hops.
Gotcha. So what you're saying is Summit hops are not the peak hop you would want profiled in a beer? Summit? Peak? Huh?
I mean, I get the joke you're going for, but that's not what I'm going to say now.
Oh. Well, can you make a pun that will work to end out the segment about Summit hops?
No.
Well, here we are, disappointed at the end of the beer segment, and you can definitely tune in to draftmechanic.net, I guess. Tune in on a website to get information on that, because Daniel will obviously lovingly place those into this. So the show notes that you can find at the website, there it is. Draftmechanic.net, boardgames.beer, same website, 2 Earls, because why not? Squarespace let me buy it, so I bought it.
Want a second opinion on some of the games we talked about on this episode? Check out some other great content creators at punchboardmedia.com.
All right, we're nearing the end of the episode, but first we must take a pit stop into the final round with a special guest question from Patrick Hillier. He asked, when you are at an event or convention with your partner, do you always play games with them? Or do you prefer to wander aimlessly playing games with anyone whose your eyes gaze upon?
And shun them.
No. I mean, maybe that's your answer. But, Patrick put this out here, and I thought it would be fun to talk about because then we could all pretend we were at conventions. Mm-hmm. Because it's starting to look like we won't get to go to any conventions this year because that's the world we live in.
Small sacrifice.
Will Foy started out with these words, and they will digress from the point very quickly, but it's his birthday, so he's allowed to do it. Alas, my wife is not a con attender with me, so I have no idea. That said, it's my birthday today, although not when this podcast drops. And even if I don't get to play much with her, cribbage and patchwork are okay, trying to introduce her to morels and parks, and maybe Ganchon Clever. She's busy downstairs right now making mapled something salmon, asparagus, and orzo with homemade French silk pie, and we're having socially distant happy hour with our next-door neighbors from our porches, and I've got some badass Charm City Meadworks basil lemongrass mead on chill in the fridge, so I'm not sure how much I care that we don't game together often. I rolled a critical success on marrying up in these 15 years and change ago.
I do have to say, I have some Charm City mead that I found in our digging out of the closet that I am enjoying during this recording.
Fabulous.
And Will probably had a very tasty beverage that night.
All right. Moving on.
Peter says, my partner and I play games together at home, but she typically doesn't game with me on game nights or events. She's more of an introvert, so doesn't attend cons often, and at events, she usually only plays if the game is short a player.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, my wife has never expressed interest in attending a board game convention, at least not until this year. I plan to get in a game of Die Crew, or The Crew, with her and her trick-taking, loving friends at Southern Board Game Fest in September. They have rescheduled to September, which is exciting. I'm glad that is going on, and hopefully y'all can go if you're in that area.
We'll jump back in to say, as a sidebar, I wonder how folks' answers to this change if we substitute spouses and partners for, say, our kids. I don't have any, but if I did, and when I hang out at cons with friends' kids, most of the time is spent playing with them versus them on their own. Some function of age, some function of their comfort, which leads me to think if 2 equally gamery spouses and partners were to go, I bet they'd end up doing some things together and some things apart. A non-fully overlapping Venn diagram of gaming.
2 equally gamerly spouses. I can't imagine what those would be.
We'll chat
talk
at
about
the
that
end
at
of
the
this.
Patrick Hillier jumps in. That's fair, Will. My son quit going to cons with me a few years back, but I spent much of my early years together until he found his way. Then he had nothing to do with me.
Because he found his way.
Because he found his way, yeah.
BJ jumped back in to say my sons are older. When Jack comes with me, we might get a game or 2 in, but he's more interested in longer games like TI-4 or Battlestar Galactica, or his favorite game of all time, A Game of Thrones.
Or whooping up on me in Baseball Highlights 2045.
Yeah, I think we all know BJ's son Jack because
moly.
he kicks all of our butts at games all the
me
time.
At that. I was first round knockout. All right, carry on.
Anyway, we usually grab a meal or 2 together a day to catch up on each other's gaming.
And Patrick jumps back in. Oh yeah, the boy always seems to find me at dinner time. So this actually is a question that's kind of interesting for you and I, because we are equally gamerly spouses that go to a lot of conventions together. We do play a lot of games together, at least at the smaller conventions. I feel like Geekway, Mega MooseCon, we play games together a lot. And I feel like Gen Con is the only time that we've really split up in terms of getting out and doing stuff, and that's probably because it's more of a business convention for us than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, Gen Con is a work convention for us. You often will have the press badge. I will not, so that means by necessity you're going to be in places that I am not.
Yeah.
There's so much to cover that, like, if we all went to everything together, we wouldn't get it covered. And most of the things that we're doing there aren't gaming per se. It's more like demoing or just seeing certain booths. If there's one game that we're both interested in playing, we usually do like 1 or 2 demos together over the course of Gen Con every year, but not so much for conventions that we actually play games at, like smaller conventions like Whose Turn and Geekway and all that. I don't know. My opinion is that if I'm going to spend my vacation time, I want to spend it with my husband.
Aww.
Like, I like you.
Yeah.
And so I want to do stuff with you when we're on vacation. We don't like do a bunch of trips that aren't gaming conventions. So yeah, of course I'm going to play games with you.
Yeah.
That's not to say like if there's something you want to play that I have no interest in, you can't do it, or vice versa. We will often do that.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not uncommon at some point in Geekway where you're playing something and I'm punching a new game and learning it, something like that. Or, you know,
walking around the vendor hall or doing whatever.
Or you might do like an RPG session or something while I'm playing some other space game.
Yeah, but like if it's a trip.
Yeah. We trip together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gross.
PAX Unplugged, I demo. So
yeah.
How has that been for you? Like when I'm out demoing in a booth and you're floating around.
I mean, I'm not going to say it was perfect, but like I found stuff to do. PAX Unplugged has a good library, so I played a solo game for a lot of that.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, I was like, hey, this is
the adventure games and
no, I just meant like it was a little awkward to be like, okay, bye, see you in a bunch of hours.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't anticipated that. But like I'd manage.
Word.
I'm a big girl, I can figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just like I like to play games with you. That's the fun. That's what I've gone to do.
Yeah.
I like games. Obviously, we both like games.
But you want to play games with
But
me?
I would like to spend time with the person that I went to the convention with as well.
Yes, play the board games with me.
Okay, this is...
Oh, I think out of all conventions, like if through some, reasoning, no conventions happen this year, I'm going to miss Geekway the most because I feel like out of all the conventions, Geekway is the convention we play the most games at.
Yeah, obviously.
And it is kind of become kind of our de facto convention we rep at because we have the bottle share there. And, we have just we've met a lot of people over the years at Geekway, and being able to stay in the hotel at Geekway is very nice. And it's a very well-run convention, and I like it a lot. Please.
That reminds me, I need to move that hotel reservation.
Geekway. Yep.
Okay, let's
there
wrap
it is.
this up.
All right, well, along those lines, in a final round for next episode, I would love to do the check-in. I want to know how y'all out there are doing in podcast listener land. Obviously, the last 6 or 7 weeks have been a drastic shift in the entire world. And if you're listening to this, you're probably board gaming fans or our family. And also, a good number of you are craft beer fans as well. I would love to just check in. I want to know how you're doing, how you're, changing your gaming habits. Are you still gaming? Did you stop gaming? Are you gaming online? Are you finding different kinds of stuff to play? Did you take up a 2-player RPG group, or are you doing something on Roll20 online? And also, how are you supporting your local breweries? How are you keeping that connection alive? If you are big craft beer fans, I'd love to know, how you're maintaining that connection with your local breweries. Basically, I just want to check in. I want to know how you're doing because we're all in it right now, and I would just love to have a little bit of that community. So join us on our Slack channel. You can go to draftmechanic.net/Slack. You can go on the Board Game Geek thread. Daniel will post it on there, and we can chat there as well. But I'm going to make a big effort to get in there and talk as much as possible as well. And I would just love to hear how y'all are doing, because I hope all your listeners out there are doing okay and finding a way to manage through this with a little bit of board games, a little bit of craft beer, and anything you can do to tie those two together. That is a perfect way to bring us to the end of this episode, where I just say draftmechanic.net, at draftmechanic on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and draftmechanic@gmail.com if you want to send an email our way. Yeah.
Board Game Geek Guild number 2470, so there will be a thread up there.
Yeah. If you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, support one of your local breweries or something like that.
If you can.
Yeah, and if you're anywhere at all, please support some local breweries or service industry because they need your help right now. And I hope that all y'all are doing well out there. Last thing to say, for me at least, Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Gray Fox Games. You can visit grayfoxgames.com and check out their website and sign up for their newsletter for the latest. Gray Fox Games, quality games cleverly crafted. Danielle, take us home.
As always, I would like to remind our listeners to please game responsibly.
And wash your hands.
And wash their hands. And tell them that I'll see them back here in 2 weeks for another round.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Draft Mechanic episode 120 is recorded on Monday, April 20th, 2020 in front of a live studio cat.
Beauty is in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter line.
Hey, this is Patrick
And this is Eric.
from
Patrick and Eric in the morning. Join us every now and again for about a half an hour as we freeform chat about whatever's on our minds and how it all relates back to our favorite hobby, board gaming.
Patrick and Eric in the Morning can be found on the What Did You Play This Week podcast feed and on the Punchboard Media site.
Happy listening.
where we all bring something to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.